I am Min-Jung, 28 years old, and the constantly overshadowed daughter-in-law. 9 months pregnant, I never imagined my husband's family would abandon me when contractions started during our family trip to my sister-in-law Soo-yeon's television drama debut premiere in Busan. My mother-in-law looked at me with icy disapproval. "Pull over," she commanded my father-in-law on the desolate Gyeongbu Expressway. She made their priorities devastatingly clear. "We cannot be late. Soo-yeon needs complete focus and tranquility. Your timing is absolutely inconsiderate." They drove away, leaving me doubled over in agony. What happened next changed everything forever. Before I continue this unbelievable story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button and stay until the end to see how I made them beg for forgiveness. Growing up as an outsider in the prestigious Kim family was like living in permanent shadow. When I married their eldest son, Jae-wook, 3 years ago, I thought I would finally find the family acceptance I had always craved. Instead, I discovered that being an in-law meant occupying an even lower position than I had imagined possible. Soo-yeon was 25, blessed with ethereal beauty and exceptional acting talent that had made her the family's golden child since childhood. She was their pride and absolute joy, destined for stardom from the moment she spoke her first words. I still remember my first birthday celebration as part of the Kim family when my in-laws arrived 2 hours late because Soo-yeon had an impromptu audition callback. They missed my carefully prepared traditional meal entirely, but the next day, our apartment was filled with reporters celebrating Soo-yeon's casting in a major historical drama. The family photo albums displayed in their Gangnam penthouse told the story better than words ever could. Hundreds of pictures of Soo-yeon at red carpet events, award ceremonies, and glamorous industry dinners. Then there was me, usually photographed as an afterthought, often partially hidden behind other family members or completely blurred in the background. Jae-wook's younger brother Min-ho received similar treatment, though being the only son afforded him slightly more attention than I ever received. "Min-Jung, why can't you be more supportive like other celebrity sisters-in-law?" became the unofficial family motto. When I received a promotion at my marketing firm, my father-in-law would briefly nod before asking about Soo-yeon's latest drama ratings. When I won a prestigious advertising award, my mother-in-law's response was, "That's nice, but did you see Soo-yeon's interview in Vogue Korea?" Min-ho and I developed a silent understanding of solidarity. As the youngest, he comprehended what it meant to live in Soo-yeon's overwhelming shadow. We would exchange knowing glances across the dinner table when our parents spent entire meals discussing Soo-yeon's upcoming projects, endorsement deals, and media appearances. Sometimes we would escape together to nearby Hongdae for late-night street food after particularly difficult family gatherings, finding small comfort in our shared experience of being perpetually overlooked. Despite everything, I worked tirelessly to prove my worth. I maintained perfect grades in my MBA program while working full-time, learned traditional Korean cooking from my grandmother, and even took acting classes hoping to understand Soo-yeon's world better. My in-laws attended my graduate school graduation only because Soo-yeon was filming a commercial nearby and wanted to visit expensive boutiques in Apgujeong afterward. They sat through the ceremony looking bored, constantly checking their phones for updates about Soo-yeon's shoot. That evening, they took us all to an upscale Korean barbecue restaurant, supposedly to celebrate my achievement. Somehow the entire conversation revolved around Soo-yeon's upcoming lead role in a romantic comedy drama that would air during prime time on KBS. Marriage to Jae-wook had initially seemed like my salvation. For the first time, I believed I would be valued for my own qualities rather than constantly compared to others. I thrived in our early relationship, building confidence through his genuine affection and respect. In our second year of marriage, I met Jae-wook during a business conference in Seoul. He was quiet but incredibly thoughtful, with warm eyes that actually saw and appreciated me. Our relationship developed gradually, built on mutual respect and sincere interest in each other's aspirations and dreams. Jae-wook came from the influential Kim family, but he had always felt somewhat like an outsider himself, being more interested in social work than the entertainment industry that consumed his family's attention. The first time I joined them for dinner, His grandmother asked me about my background and career goals, actually listening attentively to my responses. His grandfather proudly displayed a traditional calligraphy piece I had written for their anniversary in their study for months afterward. It felt like discovering water after a lifetime wandering in the desert. After our traditional wedding ceremony, Jae-wook and I moved into our own apartment in Mapo district, about an hour from his parents' home in Gangnam. I called them every Sunday out of Confucian obligation, enduring brief conversations that usually concluded with lengthy updates about Soo-yeon's latest professional achievements and media coverage. When Jae-wook proposed after 2 years together, his parents' response was notably lukewarm. "Are you certain you're prepared for that level of commitment?" my mother-in-law asked pointedly. The unspoken comparison to Soo-yeon, who was focused on building her entertainment career rather than settling down, hung heavily in the air. Our wedding was intimate but beautiful. Jae-wook's extended family handled most of the traditional arrangements, while his parents contributed the absolute minimum they could without appearing completely neglectful. Soo-yeon served as my sister-in-law, not by my preference, but because my mother-in-law insisted it would damage her public image to be excluded from such an important family milestone. She delivered a speech that focused more on her own rising career than on me or Jae-wook's happiness together. When I discovered my pregnancy a year later, Jae-wook was absolutely ecstatic. We spent countless evenings discussing potential names, preparing the nursery in traditional Korean style, and imagining our future as parents. I delayed informing his family until I was safely past the first trimester, knowing instinctively that their reaction would diminish the pure joy I felt. My intuition proved correct. My mother-in-law's initial response was, "Well, I suppose this was inevitable eventually." My father-in-law immediately asked if this meant I would be resigning from my position, showing no congratulations or excitement, just practical concerns and barely concealed disappointment. Soo-yeon called a week later claiming happiness for us, but spent most of our conversation discussing her nomination for Best New Actress at the prestigious Baeksang Arts Awards. As my pregnancy progressed, Jae-wook's extended family showered us with traditional support. His grandmother organized a beautiful Baekgil celebration planning session, his grandfather commissioned a custom hanbok for the baby, and his aunts took turns bringing us nutritious seaweed soup and other traditional postpartum foods. My in-laws sent a formal congratulatory message with a modest monetary gift. The devastating final blow came when Soo-yeon announced that the premiere party for her first leading role in a major KBS drama would be held the exact weekend of my due date. Instead of acknowledging this obvious scheduling conflict, my in-laws immediately began making elaborate plans to attend, automatically assuming I would understand that this opportunity was too significant to miss. When I mentioned that I was expected to give birth any day, my mother-in-law actually suggested that first babies typically arrive late anyway, and I should accompany them on the 4-hour journey to Busan for the premiere event. My obstetrician had explicitly advised against any long-distance travel so close to my due date, but my family pressured me relentlessly. "You've always been envious of Soo-yeon's success," my mother-in-law accused when I hesitated. "This is the most important moment of her entire career, and you're trying to sabotage it with your selfish timing." Against my better judgment and Jae-wook's deeply concerned objections, I reluctantly agreed to accompany them. Part of me still desperately wanted their approval, still hoped that somehow being accommodating would finally make them accept me as a true family member. Jae-wook had an unavoidable business presentation, but made me promise to call him at the very first sign of labor. As we prepared for the trip, I never could have imagined how catastrophically wrong everything would go. The morning of our journey to Busan dawned bright and clear, a beautiful June day that gave no indication of the trauma that awaited me. Jae-wook helped me into the car when my in-laws arrived, his worry evident in the tight lines around his mouth and the way he kept touching my swollen belly protectively. "Call me if anything happens. Anything at all," he insisted, pressing his phone charger into my hand as a precaution. "I love you both," he added, placing a gentle hand on my abdomen. "Please be careful." My mother-in-law honked the horn impatiently from the driver's seat. "We need to depart immediately if we're going to arrive on schedule," she called through the open window, showing no greeting or inquiry about my well-being, just urgency about maintaining their timeline. My father-in-law sat silently in the passenger seat, eyes fixed straight ahead on the road. Soo-yeon occupied the entire back seat, surrounded by garment bags containing multiple outfit options for her premiere and after-party appearances. I was squeezed into the middle row beside her extensive luggage collection, my pregnant body cramped uncomfortably against the door. The irony wasn't lost on me that her designer clothes had more space than I did. "You look absolutely terrible," were Soo-yeon's first words as I struggled to fasten my seatbelt around my belly. "Did you even attempt to put on makeup? The entertainment reporters will want family photographs, and you can't look like that." I bit back a sharp retort about not prioritizing my appearance while 9 months pregnant in summer heat. "Good morning to you too," I replied instead, attempting to find a position that didn't put excessive pressure on my lower back. The first hour passed in uncomfortable silence, broken only by Soo-yeon's frequent phone calls with her manager, publicist, and various entertainment industry colleagues about the evening's premiere. My in-laws listened with rapt attention to her every word, nodding and smiling with obvious pride. I stared out the window, already regretting my decision to come. Around the 2-hour mark, I felt the first unmistakable twinge. It wasn't painful initially, just a tightening sensation across my abdomen that made me catch my breath. I dismissed it as Braxton Hicks contractions, the practice contractions my doctor had explained to me during our appointments. 20 minutes later, another contraction came, noticeably stronger than before. "Could we stop at the next service area?" I asked during a brief pause in Soo-yeon's conversation. "I need to use the restroom urgently." My mother-in-law sighed dramatically. "We just stopped an hour ago. Can't you wait? We're trying to maintain our schedule to arrive early for photos." "I'm pregnant, mother-in-law. My bladder is basically compressed to nothing right now." "Fine," my father-in-law grumbled, activating his turn signal to exit at the approaching service area. The brief walk to the restroom brought another contraction, this one strong enough to make me pause and lean against the wall. A middle-aged woman noticed my distress and approached with genuine concern. "Are you all right, dear? How far along are you?" 9 months, I admitted. "Just some practice contractions, I think." She looked skeptical. "Those seem quite strong for Braxton Hicks. Do you know how far apart they're coming?" I hadn't been timing them, but her question planted the first seed of real worry. In the restroom stall, I noticed a small amount of bloody mucus discharge and felt my heart rate accelerate. This was one of the warning signs my doctor had specifically mentioned. When I returned to the car, I found my family waiting impatiently. "Finally," Soo-yeon muttered. "At this rate, we'll barely have time to check into the hotel before my red carpet photos." I should have spoken up then, should have told them about the contractions and the bloody show. Instead, I silently climbed back into my cramped seat, a lifetime of suppressing my needs, overriding my growing concern. The next hour became increasingly uncomfortable. The contractions were definitely coming at regular intervals now, approximately every 15 minutes. I tried to breathe through them quietly, not wanting to draw attention or complaints. During a particularly sharp contraction, I must have made a small sound because Soo-yeon turned to me with an irritated expression. "Could you please stop fidgeting? I'm trying to rehearse my interview responses mentally." "Sorry," I whispered, gripping the door handle as the pain peaked and gradually subsided. By the 3rd hour of our journey, the contractions were coming every 12 minutes and becoming impossible to hide. I was shifting constantly, trying desperately to find any position that offered relief. "Min-Jung, can you please sit still?" my mother-in-law snapped. "You're distracting your father-in-law from driving safely." "I think I might be in actual labor," I finally admitted, the words falling into sudden, tense silence. "That's not amusing," my mother-in-law said after a pause. "First babies don't come that quickly." "I'm not joking. I've been having regular contractions for the past 2 hours. They're getting stronger and closer together." Soo-yeon immediately threw her hands up in dramatic exasperation. "Are you seriously doing this right now? This is my weekend. The premiere is tomorrow evening." My father-in-law's eyes met mine in the rearview mirror for the first time all day. "Are you certain it's not just false labor? That happens frequently, doesn't it?" "I don't think so. This feels very real." As if to emphasize my point, another contraction gripped me, stronger than any before. I couldn't suppress the small moan that escaped. "Oh my God, could you be any more dramatic?" Soo-yeon rolled her eyes dismissively. "She's obviously just seeking attention like always." I fumbled for my phone, intending to call Jae-wook, only to discover it was completely dead. In my rush to leave that morning, I had forgotten to charge it overnight. The charger Jae-wook had given me was designed for a different phone model. "I need to charge my phone," I said, panic rising in my voice. "I need to call Jae-wook and my doctor immediately." "We don't have the correct adapter," my father-in-law replied curtly. "You'll have to wait until we reach our hotel." The next contraction came only 8 minutes after the previous one, a clear warning sign according to everything I had read and studied. Then, while attempting to shift positions again, I felt a warm gush of fluid between my legs. "My water just broke," I announced, humiliation mixing with genuine fear as wetness spread across the car seat. The car swerved slightly as my father-in-law processed this information. "Are you absolutely certain?" "Yes, I'm certain," I nearly shouted as another contraction was already building. "You need to take me to a hospital immediately." My mother-in-law turned around in her seat, her face displaying conflicted emotions. "The nearest hospital is probably back the direction we came." We'd missed the entire reception. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mother-in-law, I'm having a baby. Your grandchild. Can't you just control it a little longer?" Soo-yeon asked, seemingly serious. "We could attend the premiere and then find a hospital afterward." The absurdity of her question would have made me laugh if another contraction hadn't chosen that moment to tear through me. This one was different, more intense, making me cry out involuntarily. "For heaven's sake, pull over," my mother-in-law finally instructed my father-in-law. "She's being too disruptive." My father-in-law guided the car onto the shoulder of the Gyeongbu Expressway, a desolate stretch with nothing but rice fields on either side. The nearest exit sign indicated a small town was still 8 kilometers ahead. Through the haze of pain, I heard them discussing options in low, urgent voices. The contractions were coming faster now, barely giving me time to recover between them. "Listen," my mother-in-law finally said, turning to face me directly. "The premiere venue is only an hour away. There's a hospital near there. Soo-yeon needs to be at this reception. It's crucial for her career networking. You can wait." "You can't be serious," I gasped, clutching my abdomen. "I need a hospital now." "The baby isn't coming this instant," she reasoned, though she had no medical knowledge to support that claim. "First labors typically take many hours. We'll take you to the emergency room as soon as we get Soo-yeon to her reception." "No," I protested, reaching for the door handle. "I'm not getting back in this car. Call an ambulance." My father-in-law stepped out and came around to my door. For a moment, I thought he was going to help me, maybe even take my side. Instead, he helped me out of the car and retrieved my overnight bag from the trunk, setting it beside me on the gravel shoulder. "There's a town a few kilometers that way," he said, pointing down the highway. "Someone will stop and help you eventually." "You can't leave me here." I was sobbing now, partly from pain and partly from the shocking realization that they were actually going to abandon me. My mother-in-law leaned out the window. "Don't be so dramatic, Min-Jung. This is your sister-in-law's most important moment, and you're trying to ruin it like you always do. She needs peace and silence to prepare mentally." "Call Jae-wook," I pleaded. "At least let me use your phone." "We'll call him from the hotel," my father-in-law promised, already walking back to the driver's side. "Someone will come along soon." The last thing I saw as they pulled away was Soo-yeon's face in the back window, a mixture of relief and something that might have been guilt, quickly replaced by her returning to rehearse her acceptance speech. I stood on the side of the Gyeongbu Expressway as a contraction built, watching my husband's family's car disappear around a curve. I had never felt so alone or betrayed in my entire life. The reality of my situation hit me like a physical blow as my in-laws' car disappeared from sight. I was alone on a rural Korean highway in active labor, with no phone and no transportation. A contraction seized me, and I doubled over, bracing myself against my suitcase as waves of pain radiated through my body. "This isn't happening," I gasped when the contraction finally eased. They wouldn't really leave me. But the empty highway stretching in both directions confirmed the unthinkable truth. They had chosen Soo-yeon's drama premiere over my safety and that of their unborn grandchild. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain. I needed to focus on immediate survival. The June sun beat down mercilessly, and I could already feel sweat beading on my forehead. I dragged my suitcase toward a cluster of pine trees about 50 meters from the road, offering the only shade in sight. Each step was an effort, my body heavy and unwieldy. Another contraction hit just as I reached the trees. I sank to the ground, leaning against a broad trunk, trying to remember the breathing techniques from my prenatal classes. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. The pain peaked, held, then gradually subsided. When I could think clearly again, I took stock of my resources. My suitcase contained clothes for the weekend, basic toiletries, and my prenatal vitamins. My purse held my dead phone, wallet, a small first aid kit, some rice crackers, and a bottle of water. Not much to work with. I looked up and down the highway, hoping to see approaching cars, but the road remained eerily empty. This route had seemed busy when we were driving, but now it felt completely abandoned. I tried standing at the roadside, waving frantically when a delivery truck appeared in the distance, but it sped past without slowing. The driver didn't even glance my way. The contractions were coming about 6 minutes apart now. I remembered my doctor saying that when contractions were 5 minutes apart, it was time to go to the hospital. The irony wasn't lost on me. With shaking hands, I unzipped a side pocket of my suitcase and found what I was looking for: the emergency birth plan my doctor had insisted I carry. At the time, it had seemed like an unnecessary precaution. Now it might save our lives. I skimmed the laminated card, trying to absorb the information between contractions. Clean environment, comfortable position, support person, sterile tools if possible. The list of recommended items included clean towels, scissors, string or shoelaces, and sterile gloves, none of which I had. The next contraction was intense enough to make me cry out. As it passed, I remembered Dr. Park's voice from my last appointment. If you ever find yourself needing to deliver without medical help, remember that Korean women have been giving birth for thousands of years. Your body knows what to do. I had to believe that now, because the alternative was too terrifying to contemplate. I took inventory of my surroundings more carefully. The ground beneath the trees was relatively clean, covered with pine needles rather than dirt. I had tissues in my purse that I could use to clean my hands. My nail scissors weren't ideal, but they were clean and sharp enough to cut the umbilical cord if necessary. I could use shoelaces from my sneakers to tie it off. Another car appeared in the distance. I struggled to my feet, waving both arms overhead and shouting, despite knowing they probably couldn't hear me. Like the truck before, the car continued without slowing. I sank back to the ground, a sob escaping my throat. My thoughts turned to Jae-wook. By now, he would be wondering why I hadn't called. Would he try to reach his parents? Would they even tell him what had happened? I pictured him finishing his presentation, checking his phone, growing increasingly worried. The thought of him not knowing where I was brought fresh tears to my eyes. The contractions were definitely closer together now, perhaps 5 minutes apart. I tried to focus on the practical. I removed my cardigan and laid it on the ground as a makeshift blanket. I took small sips of water, knowing I needed to stay hydrated. I found a clean blouse in my suitcase that could serve as a swaddling blanket. Between contractions, memories of my prenatal classes floated through my mind. The instructor demonstrating different labor positions, information about stages of labor, warning signs of complications. I tried to recall everything, desperate for any knowledge that might help. I remembered that first-time labor typically lasted 12 to 24 hours, but my labor had progressed quickly so far. How long had it been since my water broke? 2 hours? 3? Time seemed to stretch and compress in strange ways as I alternated between pain and exhausted relief. At some point, I became aware that I was entering transition, the most intense phase of labor. The contractions were now coming 3 minutes apart and lasting longer. The urge to push was building, my body taking over in ways I couldn't control. I tried using the emergency call feature on my locked phone. Miraculously, it connected to emergency services, but the call immediately dropped. The single bar of reception vanished as quickly as it had appeared. The sun was lower in the sky now, the shadows lengthening. How long had I been here? My throat was dry despite my careful rationing of water. I was exhausted, terrified, and increasingly accepting that I might have to deliver this baby completely alone. Between contractions, I arranged my makeshift birthing area as best I could. Cardigan on the ground, blouse nearby for the baby, nail scissors sterilized with hand sanitizer, shoelaces removed from my sneakers, water bottle positioned within reach. As another powerful contraction gripped me, I found myself thinking of my grandmother, my mother's mother, who had told me stories of giving birth to my uncle during the Korean War when medical help was impossible to find. "Women are stronger than they know," she had said. "When the time comes, you find strength you never knew you had." I hoped she was right, because the time had definitely come. The contractions were now relentless, the pressure overwhelming. My body was telling me to push, and I had no choice but to listen. "Please," I whispered to the empty air, to anyone or anything that might be listening. "Please help us." As the sun dipped toward the horizon, bathing the highway in golden light, I prepared to bring my child into the world alone at the side of a road where my husband's family had abandoned me. But in that moment, a fierce determination replaced my fear. If I could do this, deliver my own baby with no help and no support, I could do anything, including making my family face the consequences of their actions. The world narrowed to a pinpoint of sensation as my body took complete control. The pushing phase brought a different kind of pain, more purposeful and directed. Each contraction now came with an overwhelming urge that consumed me entirely. Between them, I had barely enough time to catch my breath and prepare for the next wave. "You can do this," I told myself, voicing the encouragement I desperately needed to hear. "Korean women have been doing this for thousands of years. Your body knows what to do." I positioned myself as I remembered from my prenatal classes, semi-reclined against the base of the largest pine tree, my legs bent and spread. The position felt instinctively right, giving me something to brace against during contractions. As the next wave built, I bore down with it, pushing with all my strength. The pressure was immense, like nothing I had ever experienced. I cried out, not caring anymore if anyone heard me. There was no room for embarrassment or restraint now. Between contractions, my mind flashed back to the birthing videos we had watched in class, the instructor's calm voice explaining the stages. When the baby's head begins to crown, try to pant instead of push to allow for a gentler stretch. I reached down and felt something I hadn't before, the top of my baby's head just beginning to emerge. The sensation sent a shock of reality through me. This was happening, right here, right now. The next contraction brought the ring of fire the instructor had warned about, an intense burning sensation as the baby's head stretched the birth canal. I remembered to pant, short, shallow breaths instead of pushing, giving my body time to stretch. "Slow, slow," I murmured to myself, fighting the urge to push hard and get it over with. Just a little longer. With the next contraction, I felt the head emerge completely in a rush of relief. I reached down with trembling hands to make sure the umbilical cord wasn't wrapped around the neck. It wasn't. One small mercy. "One more big push," I whispered, gathering my remaining strength. The next contraction came almost immediately, and I pushed with everything I had. There was a sliding sensation, and suddenly my baby was fully born, slipping into my waiting hands. Time seemed to stop as I lifted my child onto my chest. A girl. I had a daughter. She was covered in vernix and birth fluids, her tiny face scrunched and purple. For one terrifying moment, she was silent, and my heart ceased. "Please cry," I begged, gently rubbing her back and clearing fluid from her nose and mouth with my finger, as I'd been taught. "Please be okay." As if she heard me, she gave a small cough and then let out a lusty wail. That was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. Tears streamed down my face as I held her close, this perfect tiny person who had just made her way into the world under the most unimaginable circumstances. "Hello, So-min," I said. The name Jae-wook and I had chosen months ago, suddenly perfect for this resilient little person who had arrived despite everything. "I'm Yuriyama." We did it. The placenta delivered itself shortly after, the final physical connection between us severed. I used my nail scissors to cut the umbilical cord after tying it off with a shoelace, working carefully despite my shaking hands. Everything I did felt surreal, as if I were watching someone else perform these intimate primal tasks. I cleaned So-min as best I could with tissues and wrapped her in my clean blouse. She quieted against my chest, her newborn eyes squinting up at me with an expression that seemed impossibly wise and knowing. We had shared this incredible journey together, just the two of us. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across the highway. The temperature was dropping, and I realized we couldn't stay here much longer. So-min needed proper medical attention, and so did I. I was exhausted, sore, and still bleeding, but at least the immediate danger had passed. As I sat there holding my daughter, a pair of headlights appeared in the distance. Unlike before, they slowed as they approached. The vehicle, a white SUV, pulled onto the shoulder about 20 meters away. A woman stepped out, approaching cautiously. "Are you okay?" she called, then stopped short as she took in the scene. Me leaning against the tree, clearly having just given birth, a newborn wrapped in a blouse in my arms. "Oh my God," she breathed. "Did you just—" "Yes," I answered simply, too exhausted for explanations. "We need to get to a hospital." The woman, I would later learn her name was Dr. Lee, returning from a medical conference, didn't waste time with questions. She helped me to my feet with gentle efficiency, gathered my belongings, and assisted me into the passenger seat of her SUV, cranking the heat despite the warm June evening. "I'm a pediatrician," she explained as she carefully arranged blankets from her emergency kit around So-min and me. "Not obstetrics, but I know enough. You both look remarkably good, all things considered, but we need to get you checked out properly." As Dr. Lee pulled back onto the highway, driving with careful speed towards Seoul National University Hospital, I finally allowed myself to fully process what had happened. My husband's parents had abandoned me in active labor on the side of a highway. They had chosen my sister-in-law's drama premiere over the safety of their daughter-in-law and grandchild. The magnitude of their betrayal washed over me in waves. All my life, I had tried to earn their approval, tried to find my place in their family, but this was unforgivable. They had shown me exactly who they were and what I meant to them. "Do you want to call someone?" Dr. Lee asked, offering her phone. "Your husband? Family?" I thought about Jae-wook, probably frantic with worry by now. "Yes, my husband," I said, taking the phone with a grateful nod. But as for his family, they would find out soon enough what they had missed, and they would have to live with the consequences of their choice for the rest of their lives. Looking down at So-min's perfect face, peaceful in sleep after her dramatic entrance into the world, I made a silent promise. She would never know what it felt like to be second best. She would never question her worth or her place in my heart. The cycle ended here. "We're going to be okay," I whispered to her, believing it for the first time. "We have each other now." The hospital emergency entrance blazed with light against the darkening Seoul sky as Dr. Lee pulled up to the doors. Within seconds, medical staff surrounded the SUV, alerted by Dr. Lee's call ahead. A nurse carefully took So-min from my arms while an orderly helped me onto a gurney. The sudden flurry of activity was disorienting after hours of solitary struggle. 28-year-old female, unassisted roadside delivery approximately 1 hour ago, Dr. Lee was explaining to someone in scrubs. Mother and baby appear stable, but need full evaluation. I was wheeled through automatic doors into the bright fluorescence of the emergency department. So-min was taken in another direction, which sent a spike of panic through me until a nurse assured me they were just taking her to the neonatal assessment area. "Standard procedure," she explained kindly. "We'll bring her right back to you." A doctor introduced herself as Dr. Kim, her calm efficiency immediately reassuring. "You've been through quite an ordeal," she said, checking my vital signs. "Let's make sure you're both okay." The next hour passed in a blur of examinations, questions, and procedures. Dr. Kim confirmed that despite the circumstances, I had managed a textbook delivery. So-min was pronounced healthy at 3.2 kilograms with perfect APGAR scores. They cleaned us both up, gave me stitches for a minor tear, started antibiotics as a precaution, and moved us to a private room in the maternity ward. Throughout it all, questions about my circumstances were inevitable. Where is your family? Why were you alone on the highway? Who was supposed to be with you? I gave the simplest version of the truth, watching their expressions shift from confusion to disbelief to outrage. A nurse's professional demeanor cracked momentarily when I explained that my in-laws had left me there to attend my sister-in-law's drama premiere. "They what?" she exclaimed, then quickly composed herself. "I'm sorry, that's just... I've been a labor and delivery nurse for 15 years, and I've never heard anything like that." A hospital social worker came to see me, her clipboard and gentle questioning making it clear that this situation had triggered mandatory reporting protocols. Abandoning a woman in active labor could be considered criminal endangerment, she explained carefully, especially since you were left without means of communication or transportation. The thought hadn't occurred to me until that moment. Could my in-laws actually face legal consequences? The idea was both shocking and, I had to admit, somewhat satisfying. Meanwhile, the hospital staff had contacted Jae-wook using the number I'd given them. He arrived less than 2 hours later, bursting through the door with wild eyes and disheveled hair, having broken every speed limit between Seoul and the hospital. "Min-Jung!" He rushed to my bedside, gathering me carefully into his arms. I'd been going out of my mind. My parents weren't answering their phones, and when I finally reached my father, he just said there had been a situation and that you were at a hospital, but wouldn't tell me which one. I've been calling every hospital within 100 kilometers. His gaze fell on So-min sleeping peacefully in the bassinet beside my bed. His expression transformed instantly, anger giving way to wonder. "Is that?" he whispered. "Your daughter," I confirmed, smiling despite my exhaustion. So-min Lee Kim. He approached the bassinet with reverent steps, gently touching So-min's tiny hand with one finger. When she reflexively grasped it, his eyes filled with tears. "She's perfect," he breathed, then looking back at me with a mixture of love and anguish. "But how? What happened? Why weren't you with my parents?" I told him everything, watching his face cycle through disbelief, horror, and finally a cold, controlled fury I had never seen in him before. "They left you there." His voice was dangerously quiet. "On the side of the expressway, in labor." I nodded, my own anger resurging as I relived the experience through his reaction. "Where are they now?" he demanded. "Still at Soo-yeon's premiere, I assume. They haven't called or anything." Jae-wook pulled out his phone, his jaw clenched tight. "I'm calling them." "Wait," I said, catching his wrist. "Let me think about this. I want to handle it my way." Before we could discuss it further, my phone, now charged thanks to the hospital staff, lit up with an incoming call. My mother-in-law's name flashed on the screen. Jae-wook's expression darkened. "Now they call." I took a deep breath and answered, putting the phone on speaker. "Min-Jung." My mother-in-law's voice sounded cheerful, with the artificial brightness she always adopted at social events. "How are you doing? Did you make it to a hospital?" The casual tone, as if she were inquiring about a minor inconvenience rather than a life-threatening abandonment, left me momentarily speechless. "Yes," I finally managed. "No thanks to you." "Now don't be dramatic," she chided. "Everything worked out, didn't it? Anyway, the premiere was absolutely wonderful. Soo-yeon's performance brought everyone to their feet. We're at the after-party now, but we thought we should check in." In the background, I could hear the clink of champagne glasses and murmur of conversation. They were at a party, while I was recovering from giving birth alone on the side of a highway. "The baby came," I said flatly. "On the roadside where you left me." A brief silence. "What? Already? But first babies usually take so long." "Not this one. I delivered her myself. No doctor, no medication, no support. Just me, alone, where you abandoned me." Another pause. "Well, congratulations. Is she healthy? What did you name her?" The disconnect between the situation and her response was so vast, it was almost laughable. Jae-wook looked like he might break the phone with his bare hands. "Mrs. Kim," he interjected, his voice tight with controlled rage. "Your daughter-in-law could have died. Your granddaughter could have died. Do you understand that?" "Jae-wook, please," my mother-in-law replied dismissively. "There was a town nearby. We knew someone would stop eventually." "Eventually?" Jae-wook's voice rose despite his efforts to control it. "Do you hear yourself?" "Look," my father-in-law's voice came on the line now. "What's done is done. We'll come by the hospital tomorrow after we check out of the hotel. Soo-yeon wants to meet her niece." "Soo-yeon wants?" I repeated incredulously. "After what you all did, you think you get to just waltz in here like nothing happened?" "Min-Jung," my mother-in-law's voice again, sharper now. "I understand you're emotional right now, but there's no need for this attitude. We're family. Family doesn't leave family to give birth alone on the side of a road," I replied, surprising myself with how calm I sounded despite the storm of emotions inside me. I need time to process this. I'll let you know when I'm ready to see you. I ended the call before they could respond, my hand shaking slightly as I set the phone down. They don't get it, Jae-wook said quietly. They genuinely don't understand what they did wrong. They never have, I replied, a lifetime of being overlooked and dismissed crystallizing in that moment. But this time it's different. This time, I'm not just going to accept it and move on. The social worker returned shortly after, explaining that the hospital administrator had been informed of the circumstances and was deeply concerned. Abandoning a woman in active labor constitutes criminal negligence at minimum, she explained. The hospital is required to report this to authorities. I wanted to let you know before we proceed. I looked at Jae-wook, then at So-min sleeping peacefully, unaware of the storm surrounding her birth. My anger was justified, but did I want my in-laws to face criminal charges? Did I want that to be part of So-min's story? I need to think about this, I told the social worker. Can I let you know my decision tomorrow? She nodded understandingly. Of course. This is a lot to process, especially right after giving birth. Just know that whatever you decide, the hospital will support you. After she left, Jae-wook sat beside me on the bed, carefully cradling So-min in his arms. What are you thinking? He asked softly. I leaned against his shoulder, watching our daughter's peaceful face. I'm thinking that I have power here for once. I get to decide how this plays out, and I want them to understand exactly what they did, to feel the weight of it. But mostly, I want to protect So-min from ever feeling the way I did growing up. Then that's what we'll do, Jae-wook promised, pressing a kiss to my forehead. Together. As we sat there, our new family complete, despite everything that had happened, I felt something shift inside me. The hurt was still there, the anger too, but alongside them was a newfound strength and clarity. My in-laws and Soo-yeon had shown me who they truly were. Now I would show them who I had become. The hospital room door swung open the next morning to reveal my in-laws and Soo-yeon, looking fresh and well-rested in contrast to my exhausted state. My mother-in-law carried a small gift bag with tissue paper sticking out the top, while my father-in-law held what appeared to be Soo-yeon's drama award, still in its presentation box. Soo-yeon herself was scrolling through her phone, barely glancing up as they entered. Jae-wook, who had spent the night in the recliner beside my bed after refusing to leave us, straightened immediately, his posture tense and protective. We had discussed our approach extensively after a night of interrupted sleep and nursing sessions with So-min. I felt calm, centered in a way I never had when confronting his family before. There you are, my mother-in-law said, as if I had been the one who was difficult to locate. We brought a little something for the baby. She set the gift bag on the side table without actually looking at So-min, who was sleeping in the bassinet. And look, my father-in-law added, holding up the award. Soo-yeon brought her trophy to show you. Quite an honor. Everyone was talking about it. Soo-yeon finally looked up from her phone. The KBS drama director said it was the best debut performance he'd seen in years. I exchanged a glance with Jae-wook. The sheer audacity of their behavior confirmed we had made the right decision. Aren't you going to introduce us to the baby? My mother-in-law prompted when I remained silent. Her name is So-min, I said evenly. She was born on the side of the Gyeongbu Expressway yesterday at approximately 7:38 p.m. She weighed 3.2 kilograms. I delivered her entirely alone after you abandoned me in active labor. An uncomfortable silence followed my blunt statement. We've been over this, my father-in-law sighed. We knew someone would come along eventually, and they did, obviously, since you're both here and fine. Not because of anything you did, Jae-wook interjected, his voice tight with controlled anger. Min-Jung could have hemorrhaged. The baby could have been in distress. They could have died. But they didn't, my mother-in-law pointed out, as if that settled everything. Honestly, Min-Jung has always had a flair for the dramatic. Remember when she had food poisoning last year and insisted on going to the emergency room immediately, even though it disrupted Soo-yeon's magazine photo shoot? I stared at her in disbelief. I was severely dehydrated and needed IV fluids. See what I mean? My mother-in-law said to Jae-wook with an eye roll, always exaggerating. Soo-yeon, meanwhile, had moved to the window, taking selfies with her award. Do you mind if I post a few pictures with the baby? She asked casually. Everyone's asking for updates about my new niece. Great publicity timing, actually. Something snapped inside me. Not in a way that made me lose control, but rather in a way that solidified my resolve completely. "No," I said clearly. "You may not take pictures with my daughter for your social media." Soo-yeon looked up, genuinely surprised by my refusal. "Why not?" "Because you left her mother to die on the side of a road so you wouldn't be late to receive that." I nodded toward the award she was clutching. "You don't get to use her now to enhance your public image." "That's ridiculous," my mother-in-law cut in. "We're family. Of course Soo-yeon should have pictures with her niece." "Being family is about more than shared blood," I replied calmly. "It's about caring for each other, supporting each other, being there when it matters most. Yesterday was a moment when I needed my family more than I ever have in my life. And what did you do? You drove away." "We've apologized for that," my father-in-law said stiffly, though in fact none of them had actually said the words, "I'm sorry." "No, you haven't. You've made excuses. You've minimized what happened. You've acted like I was inconveniencing you by going into labor." "Well, the timing was inconsiderate," Soo-yeon muttered, still focused on her phone. "You knew how important this weekend was for me." Jae-wook made a strangled sound of disbelief. I placed a hand on his arm, silently asking him to let me handle this. "I've been thinking a lot about yesterday," I continued steadily. "About being left alone at one of the most vulnerable moments of my life. About delivering my own baby with no help, no support, no medical care." I reached for my phone on the bedside table. "I've also been thinking about how to make sure you understand the gravity of what you did." "What do you mean?" My mother-in-law's voice took on a note of wariness. I pulled up the voice recording app and pressed play. My mother-in-law's voice filled the room. "We knew someone would stop eventually. There's no need for this attitude. We're family." Then my father-in-law, "What's done is done. Soo-yeon wants to meet her niece." And finally, "Soo-yeon, the timing was inconsiderate. You knew how important this weekend was for me." I stopped the recording and looked up at their shocked faces. "I recorded our call yesterday. I've recorded this conversation too." "You can't do that," my father-in-law protested. "That's invasion of privacy." "Actually, in Korea, only one party needs to consent to a recording, and I consented," I informed him. "I've also given a full statement to the hospital about being abandoned in active labor without means of communication or transportation." "What are you saying?" My mother-in-law's voice had lost its usual confident edge. "I'm saying that what you did constitutes criminal negligence at minimum, child endangerment at worst. The hospital is legally obligated to report it to authorities." Their expressions shifted from shock to alarm. "You wouldn't," my mother-in-law breathed. "We're your family," my father-in-law added urgently. "Parents who left their daughter-in-law to give birth alone on the side of a highway," Jae-wook reminded them, his voice hard. "Think about what this would do to our reputations," my father-in-law said urgently. "To Soo-yeon's career." Soo-yeon finally looked up from her phone, genuine fear crossing her face. "You can't be serious. Do you know what kind of publicity this would generate? I could lose everything." "I was thinking the same thing yesterday," I replied quietly, as I delivered my baby alone, wondering if either of us would survive. I thought about everything I could lose. The room fell silent, except for So-min's soft breathing from the bassinet. "What do you want?" my father-in-law finally asked, his businessman instincts taking over. "To drop the charges? What do you want in return?" I looked at each of them in turn, these people who shared my husband's blood but had never truly seen me. "I want acknowledgement," I said simply. "Real acknowledgement of what you did and why it was wrong. Not excuses, not minimizing, not changing the subject to Soo-yeon's accomplishments. I want you to understand that your actions could have resulted in the death of your daughter-in-law and granddaughter." I paused, letting that sink in before continuing. "I want an apology, a real one that shows you understand the harm you caused. And I want change. Concrete changes in how you treat me, how you treat Jae-wook, and how you will treat So-min moving forward." "And if we do all that?" my mother-in-law asked cautiously. "Then I'll tell the hospital I don't wish to pursue charges. But this is your only chance. If you ever again treat me or my family as an afterthought, if you ever again prioritize Soo-yeon's convenience over our well-being, we will be done permanently." Soo-yeon scoffed. "You're bluffing. You've never stood up to them before." "I've never had a daughter to protect before," I replied, meeting her gaze steadily. I will not let So-min grow up feeling the way I did. I won't let her believe she matters less than her cousins or anyone else. Something in my voice or expression must have convinced them of my sincerity, because the atmosphere in the room shifted perceptibly. What would this acknowledgement entail? My father-in-law asked hesitantly. First, I want you to truly listen as I tell you what yesterday was like for me. No interruptions, no excuses, no changing the subject. Just listen and try to understand what I experienced. They nodded somewhat reluctantly. Then I want each of you to tell me, in your own words, what you did wrong and why it was harmful. Not what you think I want to hear, but what you genuinely understand about your actions. I looked directly at Soo-yeon. That includes you. You were part of the decision to leave me there. She glanced away, unable to meet my eyes. And finally, I want us to establish clear boundaries moving forward. How you will respect my family, how you will treat So-min as equal to any other grandchildren you may have, how you will make space for all of us rather than continuing to center everything around Soo-yeon. My mother-in-law looked like she wanted to object but caught herself. And you'll give us time to process all this? You have until the hospital discharge paperwork is finalized, I said firmly. About 4 hours from now. I suggest you use that time to really think about what happened and what kind of relationship you want with me and my family going forward. You can wait in the hospital cafeteria, Jae-wook suggested, his tone making it clear this wasn't really a suggestion. We need some time with our daughter. My father-in-law looked like he might argue, but instead, he nodded stiffly. We'll be back in a few hours. As they filed out, Soo-yeon paused at the door, looking back with an expression I couldn't quite read. For a moment, I thought she might say something, perhaps offer the first genuine apology of the day. Instead, she just followed my in-laws without a word. When the door closed behind them, Jae-wook moved to sit beside me on the bed, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. I'm proud of you, he said softly. That couldn't have been easy. It wasn't, I admitted, leaning into his embrace. But it was necessary. For So-min. We both looked at our daughter, still sleeping peacefully, unaware of the momentous shifts taking place around her. Do you think they'll actually change? Jae-wook asked after a moment. I don't know, I answered honestly. But either way we will. That cycle of neglect ends with me. For the first time since giving birth, I felt a sense of peace settling over me. Whatever happened next, I had found my voice and my strength. I had drawn a line that I would not allow anyone to cross again. For myself, for Jae-wook, and most of all, for So-min. 2 years passed more quickly than I could have imagined. So-min's second birthday party was in full swing in our apartment courtyard, the late June sunshine warming the colorful decorations that Jae-wook had spent hours arranging. Our daughter toddled between guests, her dark curls bouncing, accepting cuddles and compliments with a shy smile that melted my heart every time. She looks more like you every day, my friend Ji-hai commented, helping me arrange traditional rice cakes on a tray. My best friend had been my rock through everything, stepping up with unquestioning support when I needed it most. Poor kid, I joked, but secretly I was pleased. Jae-wook always said So-min had my eyes and determination, traits I had once undervalued but now recognized as strengths. I glanced across the courtyard to where my in-laws were chatting with Jae-wook's extended family. The path to this moment had been neither straight nor easy, but we had all traveled it with more honesty than I would have thought possible 2 years ago. After our confrontation in the hospital, my in-laws had returned as promised, subdued and unusually thoughtful. My mother-in-law spoke first, her voice lacking its usual authoritative tone. We've been talking, she said, perching awkwardly on the edge of the visitor's chair. About yesterday. About everything, really. What followed was the first genuine conversation I could remember having with my in-laws. They listened, really listened, as I described the terror and pain of being abandoned, the desperate struggle to deliver So-min safely, the profound betrayal I had felt at their hands. My father-in-law wept openly, something I had never seen before. I don't know how we convinced ourselves it was acceptable to leave you there, he admitted. There's no excuse, none at all. Even Soo-yeon, after initial resistance, eventually acknowledged her role. I've always been the center of attention, she said quietly. I never thought about what that meant for you. I never considered that while I was getting everything, you were getting nothing. Their apologies weren't perfect. There were still moments of defensiveness, of falling back into old patterns. But there was also real remorse, real recognition of the harm they had caused. We established boundaries that day, clear expectations for how we would interact moving forward. I made it explicit that So-min would never experience the favoritism that had defined my relationship with them. My in-laws agreed to family therapy, a suggestion that would have been unthinkable before. The first year was difficult. Old habits died hard. There were tense conversations, setbacks, moments when I considered cutting contact entirely. But there was also genuine effort, particularly from my father-in-law, who seemed most deeply affected by the realization of what they had done. Now, 2 years later, we had reached a place of cautious optimism. Not perfect, not always easy, but functional in a way our family had never been before. "Cake time!" Jae-wook called, carrying So-min to her special chair at the head of the table. Everyone gathered around, cameras ready, as I brought out the butterfly-shaped cake we had stayed up late decorating. As we sang Happy Birthday in Korean, I caught sight of Min-ho standing slightly apart from the group. After years of minimal contact, he had reconnected with me following So-min's birth, drawn by the story of how I had finally stood up to his parents. Over the past 2 years, we had rebuilt our relationship, supporting each other as we both established healthier dynamics with the rest of the family. "Make a wish, sweetheart," I encouraged So-min, helping her lean forward to blow out the candles. The gathered friends and family applauded, and I felt Jae-wook's arms slip around my waist, a silent acknowledgement of how far we had come. Later, as the party wound down and guests began to leave, my mother-in-law approached me as I was cleaning up discarded wrapping paper. "Min-Jung," she said hesitantly, "I wanted to give you something." She handed me a small box, neatly wrapped. Inside was a delicate silver locket. When I opened it, I found a tiny photograph of So-min on one side and one of me on my wedding day on the other. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," my mother-in-law said, uncharacteristically nervous, "about what you said in the hospital, about how we made you feel growing up in our family. I found this picture of you recently, and I realized I couldn't remember much about your early days with us. I was so focused on Soo-yeon's career, her needs, that I missed so much with you and Jae-wook." She touched the locket gently. "I don't want to make the same mistake with So-min. I don't want to wake up one day and realize I don't know my granddaughter because I was too busy focusing on someone else." I was speechless, unprepared for this moment of vulnerability from a woman who had always seemed so certain of her choices. "We can't change the past," she continued when I didn't respond. "I know that, but I hope we can build something better going forward." I closed the locket, feeling its weight in my palm. "I'd like that," I said finally, "for So-min's sake, and for all of us." My mother-in-law nodded, blinking rapidly against unexpected tears. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was honest progress. As the last guests departed, I found myself sitting on the courtyard steps, watching So-min play with her new toys under Jae-wook's watchful eye. Soo-yeon dropped down beside me, unusually quiet. Our relationship had been the slowest to heal, complicated by decades of imbalance that neither of us had created, but both had participated in. The therapy sessions had revealed how the favoritism had damaged her too, creating unrealistic expectations and an unhealthy sense of entitlement that had affected her adult relationships. "She's amazing," Soo-yeon said, nodding toward So-min. "Smart like her Iyama." I smiled, accepting the compliment without deflection, another skill I had been working on. "She is pretty incredible." "I've been offered a teaching position," Soo-yeon said suddenly, "at Seoul Arts University. Less prestigious than my entertainment career, but I think I might like helping others succeed instead of always chasing the next award myself." "That sounds like a good change," I replied, genuinely pleased for her. She nodded, watching So-min. "I want to be a good aunt to her, the kind who shows up for dance recitals and school plays, who remembers birthdays without being reminded." "I'd like that for her," I said. "She should know her family, all of her family." As the evening settled around us, I reflected on the journey of the past 2 years. From that terrifying moment on the highway to this peaceful birthday celebration, I had traversed a landscape of pain, rage, forgiveness, and ultimately growth. The birth story I would one day tell So-min would include the painful truth of her entry into the world, but it would also include the transformative power of that moment. How it had finally given me the strength to demand the respect I deserved, to break cycles of favoritism and neglect, to build the family I had always longed for. My in-laws and Suyeon had been forced to face the consequences of their actions that day. The threat of legal action had initially been what made them listen, but the potential loss of relationship with me and So-min had ultimately been what motivated genuine change. They had begged for forgiveness, not just with words, but with consistent actions over time. I had made them face what they had done, yes, but more importantly, I had faced myself, my worth, my strength, my capacity to create boundaries and demand better. In giving birth to So-min under those impossible circumstances, I had also, in a way, given birth to a new version of myself. A version that would never again accept being treated as less than. That would fight fiercely to ensure my daughter grew up knowing her value was intrinsic and unconditional. That would create a family defined by love rather than comparison. "Iyama," So-min called, running toward me with arms outstretched, her face alight with joy. I scooped her up, breathing in the sweet scent of her hair, feeling her small arms wrapped tightly around my neck. In this embrace was everything I had ever wanted and everything I was now determined to protect. The cycle was broken. The healing had begun. And the road ahead, while not without its challenges, stretched before us, full of possibility. What moments in your life have forced you to stand up for yourself? Have you ever had to draw a hard boundary with family for your own well-being? Share your experiences in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they deserve better. Remember, sometimes the most difficult moments in our lives become the catalysts for our greatest transformations. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the strength to create the life and relationships you truly deserve.